In 2022, I was working with Jordan Freed as my MAPS coach at the time, and everything on the surface looked great, and I just felt like I wasn't moving forward. He just said, "What is stopping you from getting everything you want?" And I honestly responded, "It's my nightly habits of drinking wine every night, just sitting on the couch." He challenged me to take 30 days, dry January, and truly commit to it.
What was the result? Did things change?
Yeah, 3 years later, it's totally changed my life. Movement creates momentum. So by making that one change, I was able to just drive everything else in my life forward. It was very hard in the beginning. And this leads us into events because I found other community and other activities to do.
That makes perfect sense. Okay, walk me through some of these type of events. You are not going to escape the power of events. Friends, more than any other topic on this program, people tell us, "Jason, love being on the show. The key to my business is events." And today is no different. We are heading to the Windy City to catch up with a solo agent with a couple of folks that help produce some showings that leans on micro events as her weapon of choice. Friends, if you're introverted and still want to connect with people, this one's for you. We're going to cover the habits that you need to be successful, and then we're going to walk you through exactly how to throw killer micro events that lead to referrals. And when I say exactly, I mean we're literally going to unpack a specific event that she is doing. I'm talking about none other than Meg Daday. She is a force of nature, incredibly transparent in this talk, and the thing that I love most, and I'm forewarning you ahead of time, she brings an energy that's going to have you feeling better about your life at the end of the program. I promise you, wait and see. Sit back and buckle up. This is Meg Daday. Meg, how are you?
I'm doing amazing today. So excited to be here.
Friends, if you're listening on the podcast and you're not watching on the new YouTube channel, you don't know that all of her books are color-coded in the shelves behind her. Meg, I love that.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a work of art.
It definitely is. So I ask everyone the same question. Meg, how did you end up in the greatest industry in the world?
I think I'm a bit like most people in that it was a series of point of no return decisions that I let go of the things that weren't working and went all in on what works for me.
Ooh, tell me more.
Yeah. So I graduated from college and taught for 2 years, went right to law school. So didn't realize until much later that that might not have been the right path, but I spent 6 years grinding away at big firms in Chicago, kind of just working 12 hours a day, reviewing contracts, reviewing documents. And then the last 2 years, I was an attorney. I was associate general counsel for a company. It was a startup that did mud run obstacle course races and a large scale music festival. So 80,000 person music festival. I was reviewing everything from porta potty contracts up to the Foo Fighters artist agreement. It was crazy. And it was honestly my dream job. So when I applied to that job, I literally said, this is the dream job I didn't know existed because it combined my love of running with music. And it really kind of started out that way. And the dream kind of came crashing down 2 years later because I was let go from that company. We called it the Red Frog family. So it just really felt like, I was being kind of kicked out of the family. And it was crushing. I had the best legal job that existed in Chicago. I really had no idea what to do from there. So I kind of sat on a friend's couch for like 6 months and babysat. And just for the first time in my life, I started to think like, what do I actually want to do? And what are my strengths?
I got to ask, because I've never had this experience where I went from high school and then screwed around for a little time and then you end up in the real estate business. And so this is now my 27th year. You had this gift of these 6 months on this couch. What came out of that? What was your biggest aha when you just spent time with yourself?
That I really love strategy and marketing. And working at a startup, I was able to get involved in every department of the company, and I really helped kind of oversee social media and, what went into contests and things like that. And I think that I realized that one of my strengths and maybe my superpower is what Brene Brown talked recently about on her podcast, which is called pocket presence. And it's apparently a football term. I know almost nothing about football, But it's really this idea that you can kind of see the whole playing field and know what's going to come next and make quick adjustments as needed. And I played college water polo, and that was honestly, now looking back, my strength then as well. Like, I wasn't the fastest person. I certainly wasn't the most coordinated, but I was a starter on the team because I knew what was going to happen and could sort of like play that several, plays forward.
And do you marry that with then an incredible work ethic to go actually do the work? Or are you the visionary who sees it all coming that needs 300 people working for you to go do the work?
So far, it's just been mainly me with, a lot of amazing people helping out and working alongside me. But I'm still a solo agent with 2 showing partners who work really hard and a profile transaction coordinator. So, I think it's like a combination of that grit and agility.
I love it. So we're going to start unpacking this, gang, and we're going to talk about the habits that make for incredible success, and then we're going to unpack micro events in an incredibly detailed way. You're not going to want to miss it. Don't worry about taking the notes, though, gang. I'm taking the notes. They come out every Thursday. If you don't get them, go to MREAnotes.com. That's MREA notes.com and sign up. Okay, Meg, I'm going to need some habits. Tell me exactly what habits I need.
Yes. So this really stemmed from, I took another look back in 2022 at really what was keeping me stuck. So around that time, I had been with Keller Williams for about 4 years. I had been in real estate since 2015. But when I got to Keller Williams, I really started digging into the models and systems. So my first day at the company, someone came, she was giving me the tour of the office and said, "This company will change your life if you let it." And I was like, what does that even mean? And now I know, after, just diving right in, that it is the models and systems and coaching and training that's going to change everything. So in 2022, I was working with Jordan Freed as my MAPS coach at the time. And it was our last call of the year, so almost exactly 3 years ago. And I really was feeling stuck at that point. I had a good business. I had been the number 1 individual agent in the Mid-America region for like 3 years. I was doing 40 to 50 transactions, but everything on the surface looked great. And I just felt like I wasn't moving forward. And he just said, "What is stopping you from getting everything you want?" And I honestly responded, "It's my nightly habits of drinking wine every night, just sitting on the couch. I know that I operate best when I wake up in the morning, work out, get into a solid routine." And I just couldn't bring myself to do that. So he challenged me to take 30 days, dry January, and truly commit to it. And so I think for me, it was really deciding, like, what was the keystone habit that's standing in the way of all of these other things.
When you say keystone habit, by the way, I love your transparency and your bravery. The fact that we're having this conversation is so refreshing for me. When you say keystone habit, what does that mean?
What's the one thing that, as Jay and Gary wrote, makes everything else easier or unnecessary? And I think for a lot of people, it's not a huge thing. Like, for me, taking a 30-day break from alcohol was a big deal, and it was really hard, but I wasn't trying to do 75 hard. I wasn't trying to change everything at once. I just took that one tiny habit and went all in.
I love that. What was the result? Did things change?
Yeah. I mean, 3 years later, it's totally changed my life. And I haven't had a drop of alcohol since December 31st, 2022. So, but what really changed was honestly everything else. I mean, my business, my productivity, I'm much more clear-headed, and I was finally able to get onto a good trajectory of feeling a little bit more productive. I had more free time. And I don't think, not everyone's going to be giving up alcohol, but it's really just coming to terms with what's that thing that you go to when you're stressed or anxious, that if you weren't doing that, everything else would be easier. And
I think that's genius.
Well, it's just really being honest with yourself.
I think that's genius. So when I think about these habits, this keystone habit, what's the thing that if I got into a different habit would change everything? Now, you mentioned a couple. Number one, there was something you needed to cut out, which was alcohol. But number two, you then mentioned exercising, which is something that you added in. Talk me through that.
Yeah. So at that same time in January 2023, I had at Mega Camp committed to, well, I sort of fake committed to doing a half Ironman with Craig Zuber and a few other KW friends. And I think Craig texted me on January 3rd, like, hey, are you still in? And I suddenly had all this free time. I had done triathlons long ago. And so the structure of training for anything really like helps put a lot of structure in the rest of my life. So I had these 10 workouts a week I needed to do, maybe it was a 20-minute swim plus a 20-minute run. And just putting those blocks on my calendar was a great foundation for getting everything else.
What you're articulating, Gary Keller, when he thinks about how people make change in his life, and if you're new to the show, by the way, Gary Keller, Jay Papasan, and Dave Jenks, may he rest in peace, they wrote the book, The Millionaire Real Estate Agent, which is the namesake for our show. But he says that Misogi challenge, and if you go all the way back in time, this is this idea that you set this challenge that's so big that it forces you to do two things. Number one, change the way you think, and number two, change the way that you behave. And that's really the key to seeing fast, meaningful change. And it sounds like that's what this half Ironman was.
And it's the concept of point of no return decision. So Ben Hardy talks about this in Be Your Future Self Now. And I believe 10X is easier than 2X. But it's really like, how can you, I left law behind, I left alcohol behind, and I didn't know how transformative at the time those would be. But by just deciding that I was going to go all in on real estate and all in on a new lifestyle, then it just, movement creates momentum. So by making that one change, I was able to just drive everything else in my life forward.
Was there fear? Because fear is a very natural thing, but when you're leaving behind things that you've worked hard for, it's not, look, I don't know, but it can't be easy to become a lawyer. I'm guessing it isn't. And things that you're spending a lot of time doing, because when you look up and you give something like that up and you have all this extra time, was it scary?
Yeah. I mean, I think that I didn't realize how much time I was spending or how much every activity revolved around alcohol. I live in a big city. The grocery store has a great wine bar. My gym has 3 bars. So it's kind of like was just part of my lifestyle. And I think for a lot of people, it might not be alcohol, but like I want to cut back on sugar now. And it's part of going out to dinner and ordering dessert. Like there's so much you realize. I think the fear is in the resistance, and Stephen Pressfield in The War of Art talks about the fact that that thing that we're being called to is that we're feeling the most resistance around is the thing we probably most need to tackle.
Sage advice. Now, before we switch gears into micro events, I want to ask you this. There has to be days when it's harder to say no to alcohol. And there has to be days when it's going to be harder to say no to sugar, friends. I am living that, Reese's Pieces. I'm just saying. What do you do on those days, Meg? Because it's got to feel lonely.
So now it's not hard. It was very hard in the beginning. And yes, and this leads us into events because I found other community and other activities to do. But I created a version of my future self that was super healthy and, was doing other activities, wasn't just sitting on the couch watching mindless TV. And I know Craig Zuber has a 10-year letter course and book. And around this time, I was reading Ben Hardy's Be Your Future Self Now. And I had done Craig's 10-year letter exercise many times. And I just created this version of myself that had the business I wanted, that was hiking and biking outside every day, that was able to kind of work remotely. And so little by little, I've been working towards that. And nowhere in that letter was like drinking wine with friends. It was hanging out with friends. That could be any number of things. So I think a big part, we talked about movement creates momentum and identifying that one micro habit, but then really who's that North Star that is already doing the things that you want to do? And for me, my future self became my own North Star.
It's so good. You don't know, but I know for a fact, because we're closing in on 2 million downloads and there's 100,000 people a month that hang out with us. I know you're connecting with someone right now who is going through it and who needs the change that you're talking about. And I just want to thank you on behalf of that human. Thank you.
Well, thank you for, inviting me to chat about this. I feel really passionately about this, and that's why I'm excited we're having this conversation.
Love it. All right. So you've made us better humans. You've taught us habits. Now make us richer, because that's one of the things we do on this program. And you are crushing it with micro events. So I want you to walk me through and tell me exactly why micro events, and then give me all the tricks to go run the best ones.
Yes. So I am an introvert. I've said many times, I love just sitting on my couch. I have to really force myself to get out and be among people. But when I was an attorney, I went to a million networking events where everyone was standing around in suits and you got 2 free drink tickets. It was fun, but it just wasn't that exciting. I think we've all probably been invited to like a lender happy hour where you also get 2 free drink tickets. I live in a city where you have to, it takes 20 minutes to get across town and you have to find parking. It's a hassle. And I'm not going to go, even when I did drink, for just like, a cocktail. So there has to be something of value. And I knew that there was something that I could create that was much more fun than what I was already being invited to. So I think micro events really serve 3 purposes. It's to connect with your audience, right? The people that you already have in your sphere. It is to nurture your pipeline and really grow your database with like-minded people. So I love meeting the friends of my raving fans. And I think really the starting point, and I think you've talked about this before, is knowing who you want to serve. So back in 2018, right as I was coming to Keller Williams, I was working an open house and a woman named Kari came in. She was wearing very similar shoes to me. They were Rothy's. We're now really good friends. When I met her a few weeks later, or a couple days later, for her buyer consultation, it was she was moving from San Francisco to Chicago to work for Google. So I met her at her office. We had the same bag. We just automatically had a lot in common right from the start. And I was working on my goals for that year, and I realized I didn't need to continue to work 4 open houses a weekend to try and connect with everyone in Chicago. I just needed to meet 30 women exactly like Kari. So at the time, she was in her, early to mid 30s, first-time home buyer, had a budget of around $500,000. We had a lot of the same interests. She is a type A woman, working in consulting, tech, law. So I got, at that point, super clear on the women that I really wanted to connect with.
I think it's so interesting that you mentioned the shoes, because friends, if you don't know the Rothy's story, we're talking about 200 million plastic bottles that have already been recycled because of what that company is doing. And so if you know, and people like me see it from across a room. I love that, Meg.
I love that you can recognize Rothy's shoes. That's amazing.
I'm just that good.
Well, so at that point, I decided in order to meet more women like Kari, I needed to create events that would attract them to me. And, I help everyone, but I really want to meet people who I enjoy working with and who have things in common with me. And so now I kind of have 3 avatars that we primarily work with. So it's first-time homebuyers. Now they're not as often single women. They're usually engaged or married, like within a year of their wedding. So that same kind of age group, 28 to 34, but usually just got married last summer. And for me, a lot of my clients, even if they are in a couple, the woman is making, she's more of the decision maker. So I'm really trying to connect with her. The next avatar is more similar to me, in mid 40s. I don't have kids, but they have kids, or are just looking for, a yard for their dog. So that upsizer, that's selling that first condo, buying something with a little bit more space. And then the third avatar, I guess third and fourth. So my sister is a showing partner on our team. She lives out in the suburbs, an hour away. She's a mom of 4, just sort of like the other avatars, other moms, families out in that suburb. And then my parents live near her as well. And so downsizers, people looking to not be dealing with a big suburban house anymore.
Sure. So knowing this allows you to focus on who you're going to spend time with.
Exactly. And it makes the events easier because I know exactly what these women want, what they're going to be interested in. Rothy's, for example, maybe we would do a shopping event with them. But by knowing exactly who we want to serve, we can just create marketing and events that speak directly to them.
That makes perfect sense. Okay, walk me through some of these type of events, because I want you to imagine I'm sitting out there. I've never done a micro event. That micro just means less people. Is that how you think about it?
Exactly. So I get super overwhelmed by the idea of like 100-person event. And so I really keep these events to 15 to 20 people, sometimes as little as 5. And it's all centered around an activity of value. So the ones that we have coming up are Wreath-Making, holiday mixology for cocktails or mocktails, breath work, a holiday house walk, just buying tickets to that and getting a group together. And then another one that I just did that I loved was a clothing exchange. So we got 20 women together. Everyone brought like things that they're no longer wearing. And we just, in a very sustainable way, like exchanged them. And it was an amazing event.
These events all have something in common, which is there's an activity or a purpose, which probably takes the pressure off of having to be the life of the party.
Exactly. Yes. A great book on this is actually The 2-Hour Cocktail Party by Nick Gray. And that's exactly what these are. They're 2-hour cocktail parties on a Wednesday or Thursday night, all centered around some activity. And I want to be in bed by 9. So they're from like 6 to 8. And because I know that time frame works well for my audience. But for someone whose avatar might not be professional women, I think getting clear on what it is that are your interests. Like I know in KW, there's someone who runs his entire business around pickleball, golf, tennis. It can really be anything. And I think the key is just knowing that avatar first and then designing things around what they're going to want.
The book that you mentioned happens to be on my bookshelf. And the thing I liked about it was it's this idea that you can build big relationships with small events. And the primary reason is because you can connect with the individuals. This isn't a question of the number of humans that you're contacting. It's a question of how deep the connection is going to go, often based on a shared experience or hobby, because those are the people you connect with.
Exactly. And I want to meet people exactly like my raving fans. And so when the raving fans come to an event, my goal for the Wreath-Making, for example, is to have 10 of our database and 10 of their friends. So everyone's always invited to bring a friend. And I don't even ask them to bring someone who, might be transacting in the next year, but they do it automatically. They'll bring someone, hey, she just got engaged. I know they want to buy a place next. Or, hey, they just had a second baby. They're going to be growing out of their space. So my clients, without even being told, are trying to help that, they see the value in these events and they want to give back by bringing someone.
I want to use the Wreath event as an example. And what I'd love for you to do, can you walk me through from concept to whatever the post close is? Walk me through, how do I go and do this? What do I think about? What's step one?
Step one is to get clear on your audience and who you want to serve. So for the Wreath event, it is the women that are more similar to me in their 40s. Step two is just deciding on an activity that they're going to love. And for the Wreath event, I've done that 5 years in a row now.
How does it go? I've never, oddly enough, I've never been invited to a Wreath event. I think we can solve that, you and I, after this. You can just invite. What is that?
So it is, I love the craft events because people just love getting their hands dirty. And so we'll go to a boutique in this case, and they'll have all kinds of flowers and, stems laid out with a frame where you craft your own wreath. And it takes about an hour and a half. It's super fun. They get to bring it home. That one costs about $100 per person. And so it's about a $2,000 event. I get all of it sponsored except for $500. So I want my cost to be about $500. So to kind of walk you through, it's deciding on the audience, it's deciding on the event. Usually I'll see something on Instagram or walking around town, and, I just think that looks fun. So how the Wreath event started was I saw these being advertised and you can buy tickets to them. So if someone, wanted to do this and didn't want to just plan it themselves, buy 4 to 6 tickets to an existing holiday event that's already happening in your community and invite 3 of your raving fans and 3 of their friends. So After, I've nailed down the date with the boutique or with the activity provider, then I start really, it's all about spreading the word. So I created an event on Eventbrite. I like Eventbrite just because there are free things that you can use, but Eventbrite, you can collect name, address, phone number, email. So I want all of those pieces of information. And I set it so that like the person that I text the link to can only register themselves. They have to forward the event to their friend. So I don't want them buying 2 tickets. I want their friend to register as well.
So, because you want to capture their information.
Exactly.
Smart. Okay.
And I bring Phil Jones's exactly what to say language into the text invite because I'll say something like, hey, Jenny, I can't believe it's been a few months since you closed. We're hosting this Wreath event on December 3rd. Who do you know that would love to join us? We'd love to see you and a friend. So just keeping it really simple. So I make the Eventbrite invite. I text it to kind of that probably top 50 to 100 of those women in that group that I've already identified. So why I stick to kind of one avatar is I want to invite people that are going to have something in common with each other. So the events kind of become this community within the event where people now come to a lot of the events. They've met people through them, like they're becoming friends with each other. And so like you said, it takes the pressure off me. Like I can have a conversation with everyone there, but they're doing an activity, they're talking to each other because they have something in common. So
okay, so spread the word. So now you got your invites, they've registered. What happens next?
Well, so there's a few touches around that. So I text the invite to those people, that 50 to 100 people, and I email that same invite out still to that same group. If it's not filled by that point, which they often are, then I will include it in the database, full database email to just get it filled up. They'll get an email or text reminder like 2 days before the event. The drop rate for events is extremely frustrating. It's normal. It happens to everyone, but there's like a 20 to 30% drop rate. And so it's crazy, especially because these are free. So typically I'm not charging, my clients to come to the event, and they don't always realize like I'm paying $100 per person for this event. So they don't feel the stickiness all the time. But by kind of sending a reminder email like, hey, we have a wait list. This is full. Are you still able to make it? Or if not, like, let us know and we'll fill your spot. So that reminder email is really important to like offset the drop rate. So at the event, it's really all about it doesn't feel like a real estate event. I mean, there are often sponsors like a mortgage lender. We're an attorney state, so an attorney will sponsor. But I basically stand up at the beginning. I introduce myself. Hi, I'm Meg Daday from Keller Williams. Our team is Heyday Homes. We love supporting other local women-owned businesses and building community. Sometimes I'll give a very short, like 30-second market update, like, inventory in our area is still very low. We're helping people prep for the spring market, which begins right away in January. We're so excited to see you and, can't wait to see your wreath. Something very simple. It's not about real estate. They'll talk to me, ask how the market is, introduced a friend that might be doing something in the next 6 months, but I kind of want to keep it more of a social event. It feels more like a social club. So the event itself is super simple. There's no like Pinterest-worthy swag. Usually it's at a cute boutique. So if it's not at somewhere that's hosting going back a little bit, I think a big key is at a free venue. So I host a lot at my house, at my office. We have a gifting studio that we buy a lot of our client gifts from. She has a cute boutique. So I think, with the Wreath-Making, it's at a boutique that's hosting the craft, but other ones, mixology, it's going to be at an interior designer studio. So finding those partners is super important. All I do is a cheese plate. It costs $160. I buy the same one every time. Wine and NA beverages. So my output on the food is probably like less than $400, food and drinks. I don't want a ton left over. The event is usually from 6 to 8 or 5:30 to 7:30 so that, these girls brought their friends. They can go to dinner afterwards. It's really designed to be a 2-hour cocktail party, not like a really fancy dinner event.
Sure.
And then post-event is where kind of the real estate comes in a little bit more. I send a Loom video of a market update for their neighborhood. So
for each individual person?
It depends. So if there's a, like where the event was, I live in Bucktown. A lot of my events are held in Bucktown. So, a lot of times where the event is, a lot of them are from the neighborhood. So I'll just do that specific neighborhood, or I will do kind of like 3 neighborhoods that the attendees came from.
This is the first time, gang, that anyone has said that on this show, and we are well 100 episodes in. Genius. A Loom video of a market update for the guests. So now they've had a great time. You're hitting them with a piece of education, but you're keeping your face front and center in a video format. That's brilliant.
I love Loom. It's such a great tool and super easy. So if someone's not familiar with it, it's just a screen share. So we have InfoSparks through our MLS. And so it's a very short market update of here's, what's happened in the last 12 months in Bucktown. And I text the link to them, or usually I'll do a text follow-up as well as an email follow-up with that link.
That's so smart. And then that has to elicit a response. If someone wants to talk about real estate, that opens the door wide open.
Exactly. And you can see on Loom how many people viewed it too. So that's super helpful. It elicits a response from some people, but it's just staying in front of the people and reminding them, if they were someone's friend who wasn't familiar with how I do real estate, it shows them that we're really into data, that we are really educational and consultative. And that's kind of the picture I want to paint to them.
It's brilliant. Any other pieces? I mean, it's a full system as far as I'm concerned.
I keep it simple. Like, I have been an individual agent for a long time. And, the only way to do these events is to just keep them super manageable.
Now, where does social media show up, and does it show up? Are you taking the world along on this journey and making these posts, or what sort of posts are you making?
So we are taking the world along after the fact. So the events, I want them to feel really exclusive, like you have to be kind of part of our inner circle in order to get an invite. So after the fact, we do promote them. Social media, I love, and I really follow the building a story brand kind of like model for social media or for marketing in general, which is making the client the hero and ourselves the guide. So, we are a guide to our community, a guide to our local, neighborhoods and community, as well as our kind of community around the events, and just a guide to the real estate process. So, social media, I think, shows people that we work with people just like them that have the same interests, and, that we take a really educational, consultative approach.
I think it's all brilliant. And the reality, when you look up, call it 30 million average annually, what percentage do you think are people that come to at least one micro event a year? I know you don't want to guess because you're an attorney by education,
Exactly.
But I'm asking for a guess.
It's probably 80%. So
80%? I thought you were going to say like 40 or 50%. 80%?
That have either come to an event or their friend came to an event. So
that's huge.
Our database is really nurtured obviously through the events and also through an email newsletter. And so,
all right, walk me through the email newsletter. If that's piece number 2, what is that?
Also based on building a story brand. So we have a few different content buckets for our email newsletter, which are client stories. And I love those. Those do really well on email. And it's basically telling the story, and the client tells it in their own words. So we send the client a questionnaire about what it was like to work with us, how the questions are basically, what made you fall in love with your current home? What drew you to the neighborhood? There's like 10 or 15 questions. And only one of them is, what was it like working with the Heyday team and Meg? And that's kind of the testimonial question. But what we want people to see in these stories is that they have struggles. They're buying a home because they need more space, but also to solve a problem of, they need a garage or they need a bigger backyard. And so people see like, oh, I can actually buy and sell at the same time. And it's not going to be this huge, overwhelming process because they were able to help.
It's social proof that you can help them solve their problem. And by the way, that's what Donald Miller talks about in the book, that the person with the best story wins. And this is about articulating those wins.
Exactly. Yes.
It's brilliant. It's brilliant. Okay, so you got the client story. What other pieces in the newsletter? Anything else that's a mainstay?
Our events, a market update, and we really only use one or two of these content buckets for each email because I don't want them to be super long. The goal is to do them once a week, but that is not happening right now. It's probably 2 a month. So, if there's a habit that I'm working on, it's consistency with marketing. But the events solve that because by putting an event on the calendar, I'm forced to start spreading the word. So the events are a way, like the entire business is built around my strengths and weaknesses. And if consistency isn't a strength, then putting something on the calendar and forcing yourself to spread the word is a hack around that.
I love, because, sometimes we get folks on the show and it sounds like they have everything together. And I listen to all these episodes, gang, just like y'all do. And I'm driving in my car and I feel like such a loser halfway through. I'm like, unbelievable. What I love is you're willing to admit that some of this is a works in progress and that perfection is highly overrated.
It's all a work in progress and it will always be.
I love that. Meg, thank you. Thank you for sharing with us today. I'm so grateful.
Thank you for having me.
That is a powerful human. She is powerful. And by the way, if it's subtle, then you might miss it. So allow me to shine a giant spotlight. Her power comes from her willingness to be transparent and look into her life and ask the questions that many people aren't willing to ask. As I've done more and more interviews with more and more successful people, one of the patterns that I'm seeing is they're willing to ask the questions of self that others aren't willing to ask, but moreover, they're willing to then go change their lives in ways that others are not willing to change. Yeah, Meg wakes up in the morning and she's introverted in some ways, but I got to tell you, that didn't stop her from building a business that's based on connecting with people. And that's the trend. You're seeing it in almost every episode of this show. That as a real estate professional, you're going to need to connect with people deeply. Why? Because when we talk about houses, this is the most important decision someone will ever make. And you say, wait a minute, Jason, that sounds really blown out of proportion. Does it though? Because think about it. Where you live dictates maybe where your littles go to school. It dictates what stores you shop at. It dictates what food might be available to you. It dictates what hobbies are within driving distance. I got news for you. You want to be a world-class surfer and you live in Ohio? Gonna be difficult. It has to do with where you're living. And in order to trust somebody to help you make that decision, you have to connect with them. And sure, Meg is an amazing expert at connecting, but think about the tactics she's using. Number one, she's 100% clear on her avatar. What type of people do I want to connect with? Because if you're trying to connect with everyone, I bet you connect with less of them. Number two, what are the types of clients that I want to serve? Because it's my business and I get to say. Number three, I know that I'm not wildly gregarious, so I'm going to choose activity-based events. So the activity carries the weight of the event and I just get to show up and have a good time. Then invite the people that I want to spend time with. I'm seeing something about them or understanding something about them that makes me interested in them. That's so much easier than casting a net and inviting everybody. Then simply having a good time. And then the genius in her model, which is crazy, is the market snapshot Loom video. I mean, that is so smart. She's sending them data that they want, but she's making sure that her face is omnipresent in their life. And because it's about real estate, it opens the door wide for someone to drive right through it with their real estate needs. I got news for you. Meg is a genius. It's simple. It's plain. There's not extra steps, and it's based on something very, very human. I'm going to connect with people that I want to connect with and then help them make better decisions. That's what's happening here. And I'm going to just say this. I think everybody could use a little Meg in their life and the way she thinks. That's what I think. Go forth and do likewise.